The total non-stop tour continues down south as TNA hosts iMPACT tonight from the Forest County Centre in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Following a rather bloody end to the Genesis pay-per-view 4 days ago, when Samoa Joe attacked Kurt Angle with his Feast or Fired briefcase and cashing in his World Championship opportunity at Lockdown, tonight the Samoan Submission Machine and his Nation of Violence explains why he jumped the Olympic gold medalist following a TNA World Championship match. And speaking of explanations, tonight we'll also hear about Hulk Hogan's plans for a tournament to make new #1 contenders to AJ Styles' TNA World Championship, and more on February's pay-per-view, which will air live on Valentine's Day. Certainly no love will be lost on tonight's iMPACT, the fallout from Genesis. Samoa Joe comes down to the ring and explains his actions at Genesis last Sunday. The Samoan Submission Machine thought it was interesting that Kurt Angle brought up the past to explain how he never received his one-on-one title rematch against AJ Styles until 4 days ago. But it seems Samoa Joe remembers the past too. His Nation of Violence was created originally to take down the Main Event Mafia, but this was put on hold when Joe was paid a hefty sum to join the stable. So the Main Event Mafia, consisting of Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, Booker T, Sting and Scott Steiner in late 2008, would attack Samoa Joe, leaving him injured, leading to the Samoan Submission Machine returning with his Nation of Violence, looking to wipe out every single member of the Main Event Mafia group. This will culminate with Samoa Joe finally getting his hands on Kurt Angle, it would seem, in that King of the Mountain match at Slammiversary in June 2009, only for Samoa Joe to hand the TNA World title belt to Kurt Angle, leading Angle to become the new TNA World Champion. But now that the Main Event Mafia no longer exist as a group, Joe is free to continue his Nation of Violence once again, and its completion will be realised on Valentine's Day. But despite the attack, Joe hopes Angle recovers quickly, because what Samoa Joe has planned for the Olympic gold medalist in 17 days' time will be infinitely worse than compared to what happened 4 days ago. The Samoan Submission Machine is interrupted by returning Taz. Taz was brutally assaulted by Samoa Joe on iMPACT a couple of weeks ago and has now returned. But Taz finds it rather sad that Joe continues to talk about his Nation of Violence. However, Taz has a challenge for Joe tonight, and the challenge is revealed to be Tommy Dreamer, because tonight Taz has had it agreed with Hogan in the back that Samoa Joe will take on Tommy Dreamer, and Taz will be in Dreamer's corner, adding, "Do you know what's better than allying yourself with the Nation of Violence? It's allying yourself with the innovator of violence." So tonight Samoa Joe will take on Tommy Dreamer in a one-on-one match. You notice how I open up each show with a Titantron and theme of a particular TNA superstar? Well, so I want to keep changing who I start out with opening the show, as it just makes iMPACT not seem as predictable. But then unpredictability is a risk versus reward situation, and with a 62 rating, I'm not really feeling reward here. At least with predictability, i.e. a Hogan promo to begin with, comes safety, i.e. a 70s or 80s rating to really get iMPACT going. But I'm sure there's only so many times one can hear the NWO Rockhouse rip-off that is Hulk Hogan's TNA theme. Hulk Hogan has gotten the better of Eric Bischoff, it seems, when it comes to the beautiful people. Easy acquiescing to the Immortal One when putting Velvet, Madison and Lacey in their place. Eric Bischoff tells all three members of the beautiful people that they are banned from the Knockouts title match between Tara and ODB, which will be our opening match tonight. Velvet Sky is actually fine with the condition, as Sky, Rain and Von Erich have other plans, they tell Eric. Semi rating of 46, yeah, okay. The beautiful people actually live up to their word. There's no interference in the following match, as ODB gets a mandatory Knockouts title rematch after losing the championship to Tara in that three-way match at Genesis. This match has gone down the way it should have gone down back in the January 4th episode of iMPACT, as, in a decent match, Tara defeated ODB in 5:47 with a Widow's Peak. Tara makes her first defence as Knockout champion, Again, perhaps I should have gone for a stronger match to kick off tonight's Impact, but that being said, 57 for a women's match, I'm happy with that. Tara celebrates retaining the Knockouts title and shakes hands with ODB, but it's clear as to why Velvet Sky and the Beautiful People were only too happy to not interfere in the Knockouts title match, because nothing was said to suggest they couldn't interfere after the match. Tara is attacked by the massive Awesome Kong. Kong hits the implant buster to Tara as Velvet Sky looks on from ringside, points and then laughs at Tara's predicament. But was this Awesome Kong's plan to attack the Knockouts champion or Velvet's influence? Segment rating of 47, yeah. The Immortal One's music hits and Hulk Hogan makes his way down to the ring. He says he's somewhat pleased with how Genesis went down last Sunday, but not how it ended, making reference to Samoa Joe's sneak attack and Kurt Angle using the briefcase. Speaking of which, Joe's Feast of Fire briefcase has been handed in and he will challenge whoever will be the TNA World Champion at the Lockdown pay-per-view in March. But that leads Hogan to February's pay-per-view. Hulk Hogan noted the Samoan Submission Machine wanted Kurt Angle to be his Bloody Valentine, following that attack with a briefcase. And Hogan actually likes the sound of that as a name. And seeing as next month's pay-per-view will be on Valentine's Day, it's only fitting that February's pay-per-view will be called My Bloody Valentine. Hogan's next announcement is in reference to the comments he made at the Genesis pay-per-view, because the My Bloody Valentine pay-per-view will have number one contenders. Yes, contenders to AJ Styles' TNA World title. The Immortal One says the Phenomenal One has proven himself as one of the best world champions in professional wrestling, but Hulk now wants to test the mettle of Styles, not with one number one contender, not with two number one contenders, but three number one contenders. So these three contenders will be part of a tournament, and a graphic is shown in the TNA Tron revealing the tournament brackets. We will see three of these matches take place tonight from the group of matches on the left. Desmond Wolfe will take on Jeff Hardy, Scott Steiner clashes with Bobby Lashley, and Abyss will go one-on-one with Mr. Anderson. The three matches on the right will take place in next week's Impact, with the final Impact in 2 weeks, culminating with all 6 winners taking part in a 6-man tag team match. And then the team of winners in that 6-man tag team match will be the 3 number one contenders that will go on to face AJ Styles for the TNA World Championship at My Bloody Valentine in a 4-way match. Hogan ends his announcement by saying that in order to get to My Bloody Valentine as one of the 3 number one contenders, a TNA superstar will have to win a singles match and then team with 2 other superstars who will be their opponents, as well as AJ Styles, for the 4-way title match. After all is fair in love and war, brother. Sting's music hits, and he finds it interesting that himself, Jeff Jarrett and Mick Foley just so happen to face off against each member of the band, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall and Sean Waltman. The Icon wonders what really is the theme of the next pay-per-view. Are we really gearing up to TNA My Bloody Valentine 2010? Or is this WCW Bash at the Beach 1996? Sting making reference to a 6-man tag team match in which Sting himself, Lex Luger and the Macho Man Randy Savage, defending the honour of WCW at that point, took on the Invaders, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash and a mystery opponent in a 6-man tag team match. It will look like Hulk Hogan, who came out nearer the end of that match, would help his WCW teammates, only to turn on Sting's team, dropping the leg on Randy Savage and allying himself with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, one of the most shocking acts in professional wrestling, giving rise to the New World Order stable. Sting tells Hogan that all is indeed fair in love and war, but it seems another popular saying seems pertinent. Old habits die hard. Hogan has the last word, because both these phrases will come into play tonight when Sting, Mick Foley and Jeff Jarrett will take on Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in a 6-man tag team match. But there's no need to worry about another mystery, as Sean Waltman will be Hall and Nash's partner, so at least Sting won't have to worry about Hogan turning his back on the Stinger again. I mentioned in the last episode how I wasn't really feeling this playthrough. Admittedly, I've turned a corner, quite possibly, but I'll get onto that during the conclusion of this episode. That being said, because I've lost track of what I wanted to book for the future, at least up until the end of the March when this demo will finish, I wasn't sure what I originally had planned as a tournament setup, but I definitely knew that I wanted next month's pay-per-view to be a 4-way match. I'm also not sure if a tournament might have been a wise idea considering there's only a 3-week build here, and more so because this isn't like the Invasion story. TNA is not like WWF. iMPACT is the only main show to advance stories to a pay-per-view in TNA, whereas SmackDown and Raw were the main shows to advance stories to a pay-per-view in the WWF. But we'll see how it goes though. That being said, 75 segment rating, that's better. The first of tonight's 3 matches in the My Bloody Valentine tournament is now, as Mr. Anderson takes on Abyss. The self-proclaimed asshole hasn't appreciated being overlooked by the Immortal One, as well as, in his opinion, the belief that he's been overlooked for the likes of Jeff Hardy. Speaking of which, the charismatic Enigma is watching this match closely in a monitor backstage. Anderson is backing up his words tonight though, as, in about that a good heat and decent wrestling, Mr. Anderson defeats Abyss in 7:06 with a mic check. And now Anderson can relax, as his next job will be to win a 6-man tag team match in 2 weeks on iMPACT, if he's to challenge for the TNA World title in a 4-way at My Bloody Valentine. It's just possible that one of his partners in that match in 2 weeks could be the charismatic Enigma Jeff Hardy. Would they be able to get along though? 7 rating of 70, really good stuff. AJ Styles is in the ring and acknowledges Kurt Angle, first for the grueling 20+ minute match in Genesis on Sunday. The Phenomenal One goes so far as to confessing that, perhaps on another day, the Olympic gold medalist just might have beaten Styles to become the next world champion, because that's how great a wrestler Kurt Angle is. Styles acknowledges that. But AJ acknowledges Samoa Joe too. He doesn't necessarily agree with the manner Joe announced himself as the number 1 contender for the TNA World title at Lockdown in March, but Styles vows he will still be TNA World Champion come Lockdown and after Lockdown. The Phenomenal One is then cut off by the X Division champion, the Amazing Red, who is accompanied to the ring by his manager Don West. Red was successful in retaining the X Division title at Genesis against Shannon Moore, and he'll be happy now that he physically has the gold back. Don West tells AJ that his client, the Amazing Red, is amazing, but that the Amazing Red is also capable of being phenomenal. Don West then tells AJ Styles that AJ Styles is phenomenal, but is he capable of being amazing, like the Amazing Red? The conversation is interrupted by Hulk Hogan, who looks at both superstars and says, with everything that's gone on, he's seeing red here. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. So tonight, Hogan making a match. AJ Styles will be defending the TNA World title tonight against the Amazing Red. A polite, if not unconvincing, nod of approval from Styles towards Hulk Hogan. 7 rating of 65, not too bad. Hulk Hogan made mention at Genesis 4 days ago after the tournament announcement that some of the TNA superstars should stop worrying about backstage politics. After Sting's response to the Immortal One moments ago, the Icon perhaps should have taken Hulk Hogan's words on board as, in a bout that had great heat and decent wrestling, the band, that is Sean Waltman, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, defeating Mick Foley, Jeff Jarrett and Sting in 7:25 when Sean Waltman pinned Mick Foley, illegally using the ropes for leverage. This is my mandatory requirement of a storytelling match needed to be fulfilled here. But a segment rating of 54, not good. More so when you look at the text that states, great heat. I feel this should have been a lot better. So I'm thinking, as I'm getting somewhat familiar with the TEW IX, that time decline, that is age and when Superstar starts to wear down with stats and stuff, time decline, I feel, plays a bigger part in TEW IX than it did in TEW 2020, because I'm confident this match would have gotten a 64 if I'd have booked this match in TEW 2020. And I'm sure given, for example, Sting's stats, for example, his popularity is in the mid-70s, his fundamentals are in the 80s to 90s, and whilst his main skill, technical, is his high skill, which is in the 60s, I don't think this will warrant an in-ring skill of 60. I bet in TEW 2020 this would have been higher, dare I say the 70s. I'm not sure how accurate I am with this statement, or if there could have been other things I've missed perhaps that contribute to such a low score. But if I am right though, admittedly, I'm ambivalent about this feature in TEW IX. On the one hand, I hate getting a low score compared to TEW 2020, but on the other hand, I kind of like its, dare I say, realism. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not expecting any barns burning from these 6 competitors. I mean, unless you put Mick Foley in a death match located in a barn, perhaps. But I feel this score is a fair bit lower than what I would expect when playing in TEW 2020, so segment rating of 54, oh dear. Although now I'm thinking about it, Sting did have that rather fun match with Triple H at WrestleMania 31, and that's an event that would take place 5 years after this episode would have aired, so maybe this more brutish time decline feature isn't that accurate perhaps? I could speculate all day, but let me know your thoughts. The Nature Boy Ric Flair and the new TNA television champion Desmond Wolfe come down to the ring. Ric Flair tells the audience that he sees a lot of himself in Desmond Wolfe, and that's why he allied himself with the Wolfman at Genesis, and turning on Eric Young. Wolfe has the looks, charisma, talent, and the ability to style and profile. Eric Young may be good, but he doesn't have the potential to be great, like Desmond Wolfe. Wolfe tells the fans that they now have a reason to turn on their television and watch Impact, because of the new television champion now being accompanied by the greatest world heavyweight champion of all time, as well as the greatest man on television in the Nature Boy Ric Flair. But the best of Wolfe is yet to come. The two are then interrupted by the now former TNA television champion Eric Young. EY tells the Nature Boy that they could have had plenty of good times together, but that Flair has hitched his expertise to a wolf that will bite him in the jugular soon. In the meantime, EY tells the Nature Boy he'll see him next week in Impact, as Eric Young will take on Ric Flair in one-on-one action. One thing I forgot to mention about the television title match between Eric Young and Desmond Wolfe at Genesis was why I chose Ric Flair to turn on EY and align himself with the Wolfman. The build-up to the match was a parallel to the way Ric Flair would align himself with Triple H, who just became World Heavyweight Champion in WWE in 2002. The game thinks Ric Flair has lost it, he's no longer the Nature Boy, he's a loser, but Rob Van Dam, who's about to challenge Triple H for the world title at this point, at the Unforgiven pay-per-view in September that year, says he'd rather ally himself with a supposed loser like Ric Flair, rather than an alleged winner like Triple H. Flair takes this on board, and during their world title match at the pay-per-view, Flair grabs Triple H's sledgehammer, but uses it to take out RVD. The Nature Boy wanted to align himself to greatness. So this story involving Flair, EY and Desmond Wolfe here is in essence the same story. Segment rating of 60, not too bad. The second match of the My Bloody Valentine tournament sees Big Papa Pump take on the Boss. Lashley was victorious against Christopher Daniels at Genesis 4 days ago, but suddenly found a returning Crystal make her way to the ring and kick Lashley down there. Bobby finds that during the match, Crystal with the Fallen Angel make their way to ringside. The Destroyer is on top against Scott Steiner, but Lashley finds himself distracted by someone else, who the Professor on commentary at iMPACT TNA recognises as Carl Anderson, an American wrestler making a name for himself in Japan. Lashley then turns around only to be steamrolled by an even bigger bald-headed guy, again TNA recognising the man as Giant Bernard, another wrestler making his name in Japan. The interference is too much as the referee is distracted by Crystal, but turns around to find the big booty daddy locking in the Steiner recliner and Bobby Lashley, the Boss eventually tapping out. Good heat and decent wrestling, but again a segment rating of 56. Yeah. It seems Crystal, who is now only a one-named manager, hasn't had her fill yet against her husband. The beatdown on the Boss isn't done, as Giant Bernard hits the Bernard Bomb, Carl Anderson hits the Gun Stun, and then Christopher Daniels finishes off the Destroyer with the best moonsault ever. Crystal smiles with glee as she points at Bobby, telling her husband that she wants a divorce. Crystal celebrates with Carl, Bernard and Daniels as they stand over the fallen Boss. 7 rating of 46. Ugh. Taz, who at one time eyed Samoa Joe and his nation of violence, isn't able to help the innovator of violence, Tommy Dreamer, avenge Samoa Joe's beatdown on Dreamer's close friend a couple of weeks ago as, in a decent match, Samoa Joe defeated Tommy Dreamer in 7:32 by submission with a Kikina clutch. 7 rating of 66 is decent. I think Tommy Dreamer's popularity in the Mid-South is slightly better than Samoa Joe's, so hopefully tonight's victory for Joe will increase his popularity, being able to achieve better match results in the future. Good. Backstage, Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, and Generation Me, Jeremy Buck and Max Buck, continue their friendly war of words, both wanted to take credit over their victory in the 8-man tag team match at Genesis. It should be noted that the pinfall was made by Alex Shelley after hitting sliced bread. That being said, their bickering is interrupted by the TNA World Tag Team Champions, Doug Williams and Magnus of British Invasion, along with their enforcer Rob Terry. Magnus and Williams look at both tag teams and think that their squabbles are petty and pathetic, and that neither team will ever be worthy enough to hold the tag team titles. British Invasion walk off. Both the Guns and Gen Me have stopped their squabbling, as the four of them all have their eyes set firmly on British Invasion and the tag team titles. Segment rating of 35, youch! The final match tonight, as far as the My Bloody Valentine tournament is concerned, sees the new television champion battle with the charismatic Enigma. This is a tournament match, and so Desmond Wolfe is not required to defend his newly won TNA television title tonight, and just as well, because if Wolfe had have put the title on the line, then he would have lost the belt. But in a good match, Jeff Hardy defeated Desmond Wolfe in 9-0-1 with a Swanton Bomb. Segment rating of 70 is really good, aided by the road agent note, Desmond Wolfe and Jeff Hardy have great chemistry. Fantastic stuff. Definite potential for a feud between these two somewhere down the line, but not for now, as I have Jeff Hardy feuding with Mr. Anderson, who, by the way, has been watching this match in the locker room. There is a likely chance that the Jeff Hardy-Mr. Anderson feud will extend beyond after this demo, which finishes in March, but good to know I have options for the future. Jeff celebrates his victory and advancement in the My Bloody Valentine tournament, but his celebrations are cut short when Mr. Anderson comes in and starts attacking the charismatic Enigma. Anderson tells Wolfe and Flair to grab a chair and help him take out Jeff, which might not be a good idea considering what happens next in the My Bloody Valentine tournament. Nevertheless, Eric Young is on hand to save Jeff Hardy from any further damage. EY tended to Jeff as Anderson, Wolfe and Flair walk back up the ramp. I'll talk more on the conclusion about why Anderson's possible attack on Jeff might be a bad idea. Segment rating of 60, okay. Backstage, all three members of the band, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, talk with Eric Bischoff. Hall isn't sure about what to make of Sting's comments about old habits dying hard and references to the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view in WCW in 1996, directed towards Hulk Hogan. But Eric Bischoff replies by saying that the My Bloody Valentine tournament was created in the spirit of competition, and it's only fair that the best wrestlers be involved in this tournament to take on AJ Styles in that four-way match at the pay-per-view in a little over 2 weeks. But Nash smiles and tells Eric that he hears Bischoff loud and clear. But their attention is turned to Don West and the Amazing Red as they walk past the four. Red and West are heading towards the entrance for the main event, which will be happening in a few moments. The band stare at the Amazing Red and Don West as they leave. Segment rating of 54, nothing to write home about. The announced team of Mike Tenay and Jeremy Borash talk about the upcoming matches for next week's Impact. Eric Young will look to avenge his television title loss when he takes on Ric Flair, and in the My Bloody Valentine No. 1 Contenders tournament, we'll see all three members of the band in action. Kevin Nash will face off against Jeff Jarrett, Sean Waltman will take on Sting, and Mick Foley will battle with Scott Hall. I had one spare minute on this show, so I booked a What to Expect Next Week segment. This is a minor angle, so to speak. So in TEW 2020, this will be called a minor angle. In TEW IX, I think it's known as the importance of the show, importance of the angle for the show. And the choices are leave on the show, which will be a major angle from a TEW 2020 perspective. And so this would take into account storylines and heat. Or the other option would be leave off show, which is a minor angle, and therefore storylines and heat aren't taken into account. Which isn't a bad thing if these kind of angle scores are lower than the heat rating of the story. And with a 53 here, I think I've made the right call. This segment leads into the main event. AJ Styles, still TNA World Champion, following his great match with Kurt Angle, taking on still TNA X Division Champion, the Amazing Red, retaining his belt, but physically regaining his belt from Shannon Moore. Just AJ Styles' title on the line tonight though. So your winner, and still TNA World Champion AJ Styles. Of course, there was never any doubt here. However, it seems the importance of Styles defending the gold was felt here, with the likes of all members of the band, as well as the winners of tonight's My Bloody Valentine tournament matches so far, Jeff Hardy, Scott Steiner and Mr. Anderson, all coming out to watch this match. No interference in the match though, and no fist exchange between Mr. Anderson and Jeff Hardy either. But in about that good wrestling and a decent reaction from the crowd, AJ Styles defeated the Amazing Red in 10-16 with a Styles Clash. AJ Styles makes defense number 3 of the TNA World Championship. I thought, why not try this as a high spots match? Styles is one of the pioneers of TNA's X Division since its inception in 2002. Segment rating of 69. Nice, I think. Not sure if I'd hope for a few points more, but maybe I'm asking for too much. Styles with an in-ring performance of 85. Ooh. Can I import this guy into my Invasion mod? Oh, pretty please. Great stuff from AJ as always. Everyone has cleared the ring following the Phenomenal One's successful TNA World title defence yet again. AJ Styles celebrates, but he starts to turn to the Nation of Violence theme as the Samoan submission machine, Samoa Joe, comes down to the ring. Joe stares at AJ face to face, practically nose to nose with the Phenomenal One, as Styles holds the TNA World Championship in the air. But it's Samoa Joe's thoughts that are now turned to the entrance ramp as Kurt Angle's theme hits, and out comes the Olympic gold medalist, returning to seek revenge on Joe following the attack at Genesis. A takedown by the American hero, mounting punches to the face of Joe, and then jumping on the mat demanding Samoa Joe to get up before the Olympic gold medalist hits the Olympic slam. The straps come off Angle's shoulders, Angle is screaming, and then grabs the ankle of Joe, locking in the ankle lock. Joe manages to grab the ropes, but Angle pulls him back to the middle of the ring. Angle wrapping his legs around the ankle of the Samoan submission machine so that Samoa Joe can't escape. Joe's tapping to the pain, but Angle refuses to let go. Hogan's music then hits, and he looks at Samoa Joe on the mat in agony, tapping to the ankle lock. Hogan telling Joe that he will go one-on-one with Kurt Angle on February 14th, because Samoa Joe, you're going to be Angle's bloody Valentine, brother. Impact comes to a close as Angle still has Joe in his submission, Samoa Joe continuing to tap to the ankle lock. 7 rating of 74 is a really good way to end tonight's Impact. But what is the show rating? 71? Wow, really? I mean, it's not the Genesis pay-per-view with 77, but I'm really pleased with getting into the 70s here. So a few things to talk about regarding this episode. So, first of all, hello. Hope everyone is well. I can't speak to the viewers watching on the other side of the Atlantic, but to those on my side of the Atlantic, I hope you're surviving this weather. Oh, it's hot here and I'm struggling. Right, first point. I made mention on the pay-per-view episode conclusion that this was going to be my final episode here, indicating with the word final in capitals and brackets in the title, except it's not there.
Nope.
And that's because I've had a change of heart regarding this playthrough, and this has come in the form of comments from Brendan, just Brendan YT. It's cheesy, I know, but it's just amazing how, one comment can make all the difference. And Brendan, I'll get on to more about thank yous in a minute. But in the meantime, Brendan commented on the Genesis pay-per-view show and asked if I had planned to take the story beyond the demo's end in March by purchasing TEW IX. And at the time I didn't really have the desire, as I wasn't feeling this playthrough and the story of Hulk Hogan in TNA. But upon revisiting where I could potentially go with this story, I'm a little worried about the finances in this playthrough as one of the examples of why I'm not feeling it. I'm ending the month of January losing what will be a little over $1 million in the end. Although I guess I don't really have to worry about the warning signs of seeing red for, I think it will just be under 2 years. So if this continues, if the finances continue the way they do for another just under 2 years, they will get to zero. But having said that, of course the deficit each month will decrease as long as I continue to increase popularity in each region. Keeping shows and pay-per-views in the 70s like tonight will definitely help. I should mention as well, this show has helped me increase my popularity from 63 to 64 in the South East, so that's another encouraging sign. Now, as for the $1 million deficit, nearly 20% of that comes in the form of Hulk Hogan's contract, surprise surprise, which expires near the end of December. So I might be tempted to build up to Lockdown, which is the A pay-per-view in March, leading to the A pay-per-view Slammiversary in June, which then leads into the A pay-per-view, the WrestleMania equivalent Bound for Glory in October, which will culminate in what might be the end of Changes of playthrough at the pay-per-view in December, which is not necessarily an A pay-per-view, but it will give it that A pay-per-view feel when Hogan's contract ends, and this might be where I end the story perhaps. So that particular pay-per-view is called Final Resolution. I might consider changing that name, but we'll wait and see, that's a long way off yet. But in the meantime, I have thought about how I can make this story stand out when compared to what actually happened in 2010 and 2011. Though I'm not going to lie, there will be references to those years, namely factions taking over and a certain someone screaming, "They're here!" That won't necessarily be Abyss. Or maybe it might, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, there might be an idea of a group taking over, but I will say they will not be called Immortal. I'd like to kind of an idea for a better name and reasoning behind it. I mean, they say wrestling is performance art, or as I think Bubba Ray or Bully Ray did refer to it as fighting opera in a tweet years ago, which I do like the sound of. And if you think about all the great operas and theatre works, they're always based on some kind of Greek and Roman plays, stories, you know, heroic exploits and even tragedies. And that might be, spoiler alert, an idea for what I'm thinking of when it comes to a new faction. So that'll all be explained in due course. Also, I should say, I'm not sure if I'm going to hold Bound for Glory at the flagship show, the equivalent of WrestleMania, the October pay-per-view, on Sunday the 10th of October in 2010, i.e. 10-10-10 as a date. And the reason is because this game is set up where WWE are also holding a show on 10-10-10, which is their Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I don't know, maybe we might have built ourselves up where we can go head-to-head with WWE, but I might consider changing that. Again, we'll wait and see. Of course, before I can think well ahead of this, it's beyond the Lockdown pay-per-view, and of course I still need to buy TEW IX. Hopefully this playthrough will continue to go strongly enough. My own personal finances need to be better. Hopefully I can purchase that game as well and keep this story going. So, just going back to Brendan. Brendan, thank you so much for your comments on both the Change and Invasion stories. It's been really interesting reading your comments, and hopefully both these playthroughs continue to go from strength to strength. I'm also on the subject of Brendan and Invasion. For those that do enjoy the visuals that I put into the Invasion story, I would recommend taking a look at Brendan's channel. So imagine creating your own show, your own roster of superstars, your own wrestling world, and trying to convey to the viewer why they should be watching. As long as, you know, implementing your own music themes, hype packages, commentary. Brendan, I did ask if I could borrow a couple of seconds of your footage to show, but I haven't heard anything back for you, so I don't want to show anything. I think people should subscribe to your channel and take a look, because it's really riveting stuff. But this is essentially what Brendan's been doing on his own channel. It's really, really fun. The thing is, Brendan, I feel your job is a lot harder than mine, because at least when I'm watching, there is a semblance of a story that I'm following on from what happened in real life. So in the sense that everybody knew, if they were watching TNA in 2010, that Hulk Hogan joined, and the stories that went forward, regardless of whether they liked him or not, they knew. And at least with mine, it's kind of taking a story that's already been established and taking it in a different direction, again, for better or for worse. But with a channel and a story like yours, so is it Empire Wrestling Federation, I think you called your particular promotion? Because you've done everything from scratch, right? I feel your job is a lot harder in trying to convey to someone watching why they should be watching, the matches involved, and why people are wrestling and why they're feuding with each other. But you're doing this, and you're doing it really well, Brendan, so it's really good stuff. Just again, thank you so much for the comments. It's been really fun hearing your thoughts and feelings to both my playthroughs. So I'll get on to the Invasion update in a minute, but I just want to talk about what to expect for TNA Change within the next couple of weeks by bringing up the My Bloody Valentine graphic tournament. So we know who's advanced from the group on the left tonight. Victories for Scott Steiner, Jeff Hardy and Mr. Anderson means that in 2 weeks on Impact, they will face off against the 3 winners who are all in singles matches on next week Impact. So Scott Hall takes on Mick Foley, Kevin Nash takes on Jeff Jarrett, and Charlotte Waltman will go one-on-one with Sting. So there's a chance that we could see a band clean sweep, or maybe it could be the band and Sting perhaps, or maybe none of the band members will qualify next week. But whoever are the 3 winners in those singles matches next week, they will then take on Scott Steiner, Jeff Hardy and Mr. Anderson in a 6-man tag team match in 2 weeks on Impact. And the 3 winners in that 6-man tag team match will go on to face AJ Styles in a 4-way match at February's pay-per-view, My Bloody Valentine. But next week we'll also see Eric Young look to get his revenge by defeating the Nature Boy Ric Flair, the man that turned on EY at Genesis. And as for the pay-per-view My Bloody Valentine, we know AJ Styles will defend his TNA World Championship in a 4-way match. But again, we don't know who those participants will be until after the conclusion of Impact in 2 weeks. What we do know as well is that the Olympic gold medalist is back, and no doubt he's back for blood, when Kurt Angle goes one-on-one with Samoa Joe in 17 days. I've not perhaps given enough time for a build here with 3 Impact shows, but A little spoiler perhaps, I am thinking of doing another non-US pay-per-view. Obviously the first one in this story, but like I've done with Invasion, I'm interested in doing another pay-per-view abroad. And I might do that in between My Bloody Valentine's February pay-per-view, a Lockdown's pay-per-view in end of March, because I think I've done about 5 or 6 weeks build in between both shows, so stay tuned for that one. I think that wraps up this episode of Impact. It's nice to feel revitalised coming into this playthrough, and thanks again to Brendan for your comments, much appreciated. Right, as for Invasion, I reckon I'm about 70% of the way through to completion. I apologise this is taking so long, but seriously, shout out to video editors and content creators that are doing everything from scratch. You have my utmost respect. In fact, scratch that, shout out to video editors and content creators in general, because you have my respect too. So, I've just got a couple of matches I need to do, some of which will have hype packages leading into the matches themselves. And then I want to talk about the end of the show, the thoughts and feelings towards the post-Sunday Night Heat and pay-per-view results, the matches that are involved in both shows, and conclude with the future of the Invasion story itself, and then talk briefly about what to expect going forward for the next pay-per-view. I just really hope that the payoff will be worth the wait, and you don't find that the show itself is the equivalent of Chinese democracy. If anybody gets that reference, hats off to you. But again, I'll continue to keep you informed, and thank you for bearing with me. But that comes to an end as far as this episode of TNA is done, and it's nice to know this story itself could go somewhere possibly. So the next episode for TNA Change will be Impact, and I will see you soon. This weather is killing me, so everyone please hydrate. And as ever, thank you so much for watching.